Three, two, one.
How's it going, everyone? This is DJ Aceman alongside the legendary Life of Big Don here today for the Peace and Chaos program live stream. Big Don, what's going on?
Nothing much. We are busy week this week. Obviously, we got the big news of the George Floyd case in terms of the verdict of Officer Derek Chauvin, which you will gladly see in the thumbnail title that we made for this podcast. We're also going to be talking about the repercussions that has with BLM, and we're also be talking about some other issues tonight, including what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. There's a lot of bills being thrown around, including stuff like a new anti-hate bill that's being thrown around to Congress right now.
Yep.
And then we got the Green New Deal and the debate for that. So we will be talking about that tonight.
Yes, we're going to be having a lot of great segments tonight on the show, so keep it locked right here. Just a reminder, though, before we always start, follow us on Twitter, Peace and Chaos P1. That is Peace and Chaos P1. If you don't catch it now, you can always go to our main YouTube page, and we actually have a banner now, and you can click on both the Twitter and the Instagram icons, and you can follow us on there. And also go follow us on Instagram, Peace and Chaos _podcast. That is Peace and Chaos _podcast. We did the poll this week. We got some great feedback from that. And you can always go check out our Instagram. We always put the thumbnails on there and a reminder of when we go live. We always go live at 8 p.m. Eastern time, only on YouTube for Saturday nights. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time, Saturday nights on YouTube. All right, let's get into the first story. This has been a very monumentous week. On Tuesday, we heard the verdict for former officer Derek Chauvin in the George Floyd case. Chauvin was charged with second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. This was all within a few days. The jury came up with this. The jurors did deliberate for more than 10 hours over 2 days before coming to this decision. And a lot of people have felt like justice has been served in this case. But a lot of things were talked about in the case, things such as, with the murder, for instance, about was it intentional? They did claim that it was use of force, excessive use of force. The police department did testify against him that way. They also discussed things about just in general with the whole anatomy thing with George Floyd. And they spoke a lot about that as well. And they detailed a lot. And this case was not just, nationally known. It was worldwide. Everyone had their eyes. I saw on social media all over the world, people were tweeting about this, discussing this. This is not just an American story. This is a world story. And this is, it's been a very monumentous week in terms of the George Floyd case. But Big Don, I want to get your initial thoughts, and then we'll talk a little bit about the verdict.
Yeah, for those who actually kept up with the trial going on with George Floyd, I think it was highly unraveling in terms of sort of how they broke down because you heard a lot of this stuff going around about like, okay, what was George Floyd's real cause of death here? And they brought in a lot of examiners. They brought in a lot of forensics people to go over sort of what other external factors were going on. And that's kind of the political debate behind it. There's a group of people online that, of course, think that George Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. And while he did have that in the system, there was certainly, as you can see on the video, there was certainly a amount of influence being done when an Officer Chauvin here put his knee on George Floyd's neck. So that's my opinion on sort of it. It covered a lot of ground. I think it was a pretty well done trial, to be quite honest with you. It was very efficiently done. It flew by. I will be honest with you about that.
Yeah, it did. A lot of the time you think of cases, they could go on for, years and years and years. But I think that this case was efficiently done. I think it was, really well done. I thought that it ran really well. Everything that they discussed was really relevant. I didn't think that it was slow by any means. I thought it was a due and just process, and I thought that therefore it was a fair and free trial. I think that since it had so much attention, that it felt like it went by really short. I mean, it was only, I think, a month or two, like a month and a half. But I thought that it went really well. Everything that they discussed was really relevant, and I thought that overall, I think that the right ruling and the verdict was correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I found interesting was covering sort of the past of Chauvin here. I mean, there are a lot of reports going around that Chauvin used this aggressive style behavior among when detaining like other people,
Hmm.
for lack of better terms there. But I think there's going to be a lot of stuff coming out about like George Floyd and Derek Chauvin within the coming months or two, maybe even within the next couple of years. You never know what entertainment could pop up with this in terms of how the because this is a big story nonetheless. This led to a big movement. Obviously, we saw it with the BLM movement that's still going on today. A lot of stuff has come out about that recently. But I think this is, in terms of the verdict, he was found guilty of all charges, including second-degree murder and third-degree manslaughter. I think all those charges are fair. I think they did a good job of assessing those charges. I don't think he got first degree or anything, but I definitely don't think he should have been acquitted on any of those charges.
Mhm. All right. But I think that moving forward in this case, I mean, first we can talk about the other officers, and even though that they were not a part of it, um, I mean, they didn't deliberately kill Floyd. They do hold some authority over this case. And what's going to happen for next for them is they're going to be going to court later on in the year. And most likely they're going to plead guilty as well. Some of the charges that are including in this case are I think they're going to be, I think it's attempted. I think it's, they're going to be, I believe that they're going to be, there are some specific charges that they're going to be, I think they're going to go to trial for. Um, doesn't specify here. I know that there are a few though. I think it's, I forgot what they were all charged for. I think it was for being a part of the being a part of not taking responsibility. I think that was one of them.
Yeah,
And
I think
there's
that
a
was like an
few
innocent
others.
bystander.
Yeah, bystander ones. That's what it was. Um, but most likely they're going to be going to jail. I mean, they're going to be going to trial in August. I believe that they will probably all be found guilty just because of how egregious this case was. I think that they're all going to be found guilty. I just That's what I see from this case. I can't see them walking off, but I know that they're going to have deals where they're probably, 15, 20 years each or something. But I know that Chauvin gets up to 45. But I think with these officers, they will probably have I mean, they'll definitely have shorter sentences than Chauvin. It's just a
Oh yeah,
matter of what.
definitely.
And I think it's going to be interesting if they even decide to speak in these cases.
BJ, I'll be right back.
All right, all right. All right, Big Don is going to be right back. Anyways, I'm going to keep discussing here. But what I think about this case and just in general, what's going to happen is I think all these officers, if they do decide to testify, which I don't know if they're going to, I think that if they do have strict defendants with them, I think that they might not be speaking. However, if they do speak, I think it would be very interesting to hear what was going on in their minds when Floyd was pleading for his life on the ground and their fellow officer, former officer Chauvin, had his knee on his neck. I think that would be very interesting to hear maybe what was going on in their minds. Why didn't Officer Tao, former Officer Tao, former Officer Lane, and former Officer Kuhn, why didn't they step in? Because I remember the first body camera, well, the first bystander video of this was of former Officer Tao just standing there, hands on his hips, just looking around and trying to get the whole crowd. And then I remember former Officer Lane and former Officer Kuhn were just standing to the side, kind of out of the picture, while Chauvin had his knee on Floyd's neck, and Tao was kind of standing there just over him. I think it's going to be interesting to hear if they do speak, which I don't think they're going to, but it would be interesting to hear that. So that's
All right,
kind of
I'm
like
back.
my take. That's just my take on it. Just if they do decide to testify, if not, I don't think they're going to, but it would be interesting to hear their opinion. But Big Don, I was just talking about how I think it would be interesting to hear these three officers take and why they did not step in at the time. Specifically, I was talking about former Officer Tao. He's in the middle right here. He
Mhm.
was, I don't know if you remember the video that was surfacing first of the George Floyd killing. And I don't know if you remember former Officer Tao standing there in the middle of there's like a video of a civilian standing on the sidewalk, and it had Tao just looking over former Officer Chauvin while officers Kuhn and Lane were kind of standing off to the side.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting perspective to look at because, I mean, we don't know. I'm not sure what exactly their background is, like how long they've been on the force to have like some authority to step in. But obviously, what they did was kind of uncalled for, and in that regard, in terms of complying with sort of police guidelines, even though with
Mhm.
excessive use of force. So I think you're right. I think it's going to be an interesting perspective to see.
Yeah, I think that their law, I mean, their defendants are probably not their counsel. I don't think that their counsel, I mean, their personal attorney, I don't think that they're going to have them testify. I think they're going to do probably the same thing as Chauvin, because I know that former Officer Chauvin, like they told him not to speak. I know that his defendant told him not to speak at all. Don't say anything. And I'm thinking that probably to be safe, they probably will not speak. However, I cannot specify. That's going to be in a couple months, anyways.
Mhm.
It's not going to be in the next couple weeks, but um, that is going to be interesting to hear. I'd really love to hear, and I'm sure that they're going to bring in, officers and deputies, a part of the Minneapolis police, and I want to hear what they had to say about this and what the protocols are because I don't know. The first week in the case of the Derek Chauvin case, they were just speaking to officers, the chief of the police department, and other higher officials of the Minneapolis Police Department and what the specific protocols are pertaining to that case. I would really love to hear what assistant officers have to do in these types of situations because I think that it's going to be very compelling for the jury in this case. I think it's going to be very just to know the details and know what the protocols are, and just basing it off of that, how the actions of these three former officers, along with former officer Derek Chauvin, how that all plays is going to be very telling in this case.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's still going to be a lot of information to unravel here. But
That will
chat,
be in
well, let me know what you
August.
think of this case. Sound off in the comments below. We'd like to get your info on this. Obviously, this is a highly controversial case, so we value any opinion on this. But let's move forward here. I want to ask you this: where's the BLM movement go from here in terms of okay, we dealt with this case, we got our justice here. Where do we go from here?
I think for BLM and all the supporters, people who find themselves as allies within the BLM movement, I think that they're going to continue to fight. I think that George Floyd was like the monumentous thing. And even though justice has been served, there are plenty of other cases to go along with it. I think that in terms of police brutality, because remember, Black Lives Matter was started after the killings of Trayvon Martin and early signs like back in 2012 to 2013. This is when the movement really started to become what it is today. I think that they're going to continue to fight for transparency within police departments, accountability, but they're also going to be focusing a lot on, socioeconomic issues like we saw over the summer, how even though the Floyd um, killing, how that really sparked it all. I think that they're also going to be focusing a lot on political things as well. And that's why it has become kind of controversial to some. I think that that organization has become very politicized over. I mean, that's what in my opinion, I think they've become politicized with last year in particular. But I think that they're going to still fight for accountability. They're going to pressure police departments to do a lot more. I think we're going to see more defunding of the police and other things of that nature.
Yeah, and there's obviously gonna be a great debate in terms of what's going on. I think for the next couple of years, actually, I think we're gonna definitely see this in terms of midterms because these ideas are very polarizing. So of course, this can have a huge influence on sort of how people vote.
Mhm.
I think it might have the potential to bleh, to greatly divide people in terms of their beliefs because, I mean, I think the terminology of defunding the police is obviously
Oh, it's
seems to
very
be a bit
off-putting.
hyperbolic.
I think it's off-putting for a lot of people. And I don't know if you remember, I mean, this is going back to the 2020 election now and the campaign and how um, former President Trump, how he had, I don't know, remember if you ever saw the television ad of all the protests going on. I think it aired in the summer, July and August.
Right.
They had it on, I think, in almost every single swing state. And I think they almost had it on in every single state that was not a swing state for either party. And it was this old woman, and somebody broke into her house. They wore all like a whole balaclava and everything. And it was an old woman, and she tried calling the police department, her local police department, and all it said was, "We are not here to answer the phone. Next time we will be here is in 5 days." And then it said,
Oh
"This is
yeah, that's
what's going to
right.
happen." Remember that?
I did remember that.
That was one of those ones where, I mean, if you are going to say things like defund the police, I mean, it's going to scare people. Like, don't forget, I mean, for some, I think it's mostly like a younger thing, anyways. I think a lot more younger people who are a part of the BLM movement, I think that they're fond of it. I think that they really want to advocate for defunding the police because they see, I think that they understand it more in terms of, it's not really, it's defunding, but it's reallocating funds to other programs in inner city areas and areas that are underdeveloped and areas where there's less, less development and less opportunity. That's kind of what the message is.
Yeah, but
And
I think in terms of terminology, I mean, if you if this was like back then during like May, I think still people are still kind of like this. If you if you ask like what does defunding the police, if someone says defund the police, we're like, well, you like what do you mean by that? It's like, well, we don't want to take away all the funding, we just want to reallocate funds. I'm like, well, why can't you just say reallocate police funds or
I
like
think,
a cab or all those terminology is right there. They're kind of meant to be hyperbolic in a way. I
mhm,
think there's gonna be some debates of like what extent we should go to that.
I
Because there
agree.
are some people that literally want to say, okay, we're gonna abolish the police here. There's no one really in mainstream politics that advocates for that, but still there's always a group of radicals within any sort of movement.
And don't forget too, the role of media in this is super significant. Like, I think that if you said, if you, I don't know, if you're a writer or whatever, and you just wrote a story saying, I think we should reallocate funds, it's not probably going to get a lot of clicks. I think that if you say we should defund the police in all caps and make it so that people want to read it, that's like a form of clickbait. And I think that people want to hear these extreme views because I think these extreme views really, get the reader to be attentive, maybe get more emotion into the reader. And I think that that is something else that the media definitely played this summer with the whole, I mean, you could see it in conservative media. They talked about this every day. They were obsessed with this,
Yeah, they
with
were.
the whole defund the police. Um, and I think the liberal media, they were not really touching on it too much. They were mostly touching on accountability and things of that nature, and also socioeconomic, um, systemic racism. Racism. They were speaking about that, but the conservative media was talking about defund the police, defund the police, defund the police, and they were using that to their advantage to push their political agenda. And I
Yeah.
think that with the other side too, they were speaking about um, systemic racism, and they were trying to push their narrative. So I think that with these terms, it really gets their bases, the people who consume their media, and it just gets them to really be emotionally drawn. And I think that's another thing that we need to look at when we discuss terms such as defund the police and other terms.
Right, exactly. I think if we ever do the debate series, this is definitely a topic I want to cover.
I
Because
think definitely.
I want to get like both views on this. I think me and PJ personally kind of fall into a middle ground with this.
Mhm.
Like, of course, there's going to be we want some improvement within the system, but how far are we willing to go with that is the ultimate question in terms of how much we spend and what the efficiency rate of that is going to be.
I agree. Yeah, I think that just going ahead, I think that, I mean, you spoke about the midterms as well. And I mean, those are going to be coming up in the next year and a half. And I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how, I mean, a lot can change in a year. I mean, last year was the biggest example of that, you know. I think that next year a lot can change with the whole BLM movement. You know, is it going to be something that pushes for, you know, police accountability, or are they going to have a separate agenda too, you know? Are they going to have more, you know, initiatives, more things that they're pushing, and could political opponents use that to their advantage to scare voters into, you know, maybe they were voting on one candidate, but then this candidate said something that maybe got them scared, and you know the other candidate could use that at their advantage. You know, what are the political narratives going to be in a year and a half, and how can that shape the outcome of races that we don't know right
Right. I think it's going to be a lot depending on rhetorical strategy, because I think there's going to be some politicians that are going to be not, they're going to be very distant, even Democrats,
now?
when it comes to sort of the rhetoric and narrative that's going on within the BLM movement. And there are going to be some that are going to absolutely embrace it.
And you know what brings up, this is not really going off topic. This is just something that's a little relevant. I don't know if you saw the interview with former President Obama. This was on 60 Minutes. This was right after, I believe, um, like 2 weeks before now President Biden was being inaugurated. And this was right after, I believe, the insurrection. I think it was really early this year. And President Obama spoke about, he said, when you use the term defund the police, you just don't know how off putting that is. He said it's something along those terms, and how it really scares potential voters into looking the wrong way, and how he was very, because I'm sure he would never use that term if he was ever running. He
No,
would
absolutely
never
not.
use it. He's very, I would say one thing about President Obama and how his campaigns were run were he was very careful in the terminology he used, because, you know, he was a candidate who first time around, I think he got 70 million, 68 million votes in
Yeah, he had
2008.
the largest turnout of votes
Largest turnout. Yeah.
before
And
the recent election.
yeah. And how, you know, that really played into how his, you know, campaign was. And I mean, if you look back on all the policies, he had pretty moderate policies, but they really touched on a lot of people who were, you know, independents, maybe a little left leaning, but he still got a lot of the independent vote back in 2008. And when you look at that today, if you use terms, if let's say if President Obama was running for president in 2020, let's just say we didn't know about him until 2016 or whatever, he decided to run in 2020. And let's say he used the term defund the police. You know how much percent of that vote of the people in 2008 who actually voted for him, who are maybe middle ground voters? I'm sure that he would lose a lot of, maybe he'd lose like maybe 1, 2, 3 million of those voters, just because if you use that terminology, it might be off putting to the middle ground voter.
Right, exactly. I think we apply that, he's definitely going to lose a lot of percentage points. And if it was running against, it might be a close race with McCain or Romney.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so much with Romney, but if he was running against Trump, I mean that would bring. I think we got ourselves a competition there.
You know, I think we're going a little off, but I think it would be a competition, because I think this past election showed how divided the country was, how the
Yep.
two different narratives and ideologies really just clashed. And I think Biden could have got a lot more. I think, I mean, I think he could have done a little bit better, maybe if he spoke a little bit more about, you know, focused a little bit more about looting and rioting in a way, and crime and justice, but didn't really, because he was very careful in what he said as well. But I just think that a lot of people did vote for former President Trump because of that. And I think that Biden could have easily expanded, maybe if he clarified on what he said a few times, speculations, because Trump really beat him in the whole. I think Trump got a lot more votes because of the riots, and I think he lost a lot because of COVID.
Yeah, I think that's definitely how it played out. I mean, yeah, especially when it comes to how they fund the campaigns. We go back to the scare ads that they played. I mean, and even then, I mean, Trump was picking out stuff like, "Oh, Joe has dementia" and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was definitely using that. That was what they said, and that was what they did on the campaign trail. Really poke fun of other candidates, expose them for what they are, and then exaggerate too. Trump exaggerated a lot. Joe, he did it sometimes as well, but I mean, it came out to benefit both of them because they were able to gain voters, maybe skew the minds of some undecided voters, things like that. And I think that just moving forward, I mean, kind of going back to the BLM thing, it's going to depend a lot on the next year and a half. Are we going to see another summer where there's going to be a lot of cases where, unfortunately, unarmed Black men, women, young children, whatever, they're they're going to be killed by the police? Is that what's going to happen this summer? Because I mean, we're going to segue into the next story right here because this is another serious case that just occurred, and this is in Columbus, Ohio, with Makia Bryant. She was a 16-year-old girl. Um, in the case, there's the whole video. I'm not really going to show you the video. I don't think we're going to be playing any videos just because of how graphic it is.
Right. But we can, but we
But there
obviously
are
got the articles
pictures.
here.
There are pictures on here. And, I think this was a very important thing to segue into because this was going on right on Tuesday as well. There was a lot of stories on Tuesday to bring you, but this story, this came out, I believe this event happened on Monday or Tuesday. It happened fairly recently. And the police decided to, in a transparent way, release the body cam footage of the killing of 16-year-old Makia Bryant. There's a lot to unpack here. Um, I think that this one is a lot more. People have a lot of differing views on this. I think that what the body cam footage showed um, really showed how complex this was, and I'll give you a little bit of a laydown of what happened.
Yeah.
So, officers responded to a call at, I believe it was Brown's. I believe she's a foster child. So she was at a house of someone else, and there was an altercation that happened. So I watched the video. The officer came up, and you could hear in the background there was a lot of screaming going on. There was a lot of screaming. You could tell there was an altercation. And there were a few people standing by a parked car in a driveway, and you could hear just something going on in the background. The police officer did not really know what was going on at the time. He just kind of came in, and out of nowhere, two girls kind of started fighting. And the fight kind of moved around. It moved from the driveway to the sidewalk area. And then what appeared to be Makia Brown, she kind of had, if you look right here in this picture, she has something in her hand. And
Yeah.
I think, which was a knife.
This reminds me a lot of what was last year's case where when someone brandished a knife. It was in a.
Oh, I can't remember. When do you know when it happened specifically?
It happened like in July.
Why? Was this in the Wendy's parking lot?
No, this wasn't the Wendy's parking lot. I think it was in. I think it was the Kenosha incident.
Oh, the Kenosha.
It wasn't
with
a Kyle Rittenhouse, but
it
it was the
with,
thing that kind of sparked it. I think it was.
Oh, the one where the guy,
He
Jacob
was
Blake?
going. He was turning.
Jacob Blake.
Yeah, Jacob Blake. He was going back into his car, and then he was.
Yeah, they didn't know what he had, and he has children in the back. I don't know. It was I did see that one. Yeah, that one was too. But with
Yeah,
this case,
I think this is a little bit more clear cut. I mean, we clearly see that that Makia Bryant is brandishing a very sharp object, if to what seems to be a knife. I mean, we're just gonna assume it's a knife.
Yeah, I mean, in this one too, the protocol that they said afterwards, I believe the police officers, the director of public safety, yeah, he spoke about it, saying that his condolences go to Makia's family. But I believe that one of the police officers said afterwards that a police officer can use deadly force when other lives are being impacted. So I think that this case is going to be a lot about specifically the female in the pink, who, I mean, if you watch the video, she's just standing here, and I don't know who this person is. I don't know who this person is. They don't specify, but the issue started right, like kind of around this car right here, where this man, just standing behind him, this area, and you could just see the footage, and it goes, they kind of loop right here, and the police officer came in out of nowhere, but this girl right here, Makia Brown, Bryant, she came in and she had what looks like, which is now a knife, and yeah, she looks like she was about to stab the girl in the pink, and I think that's when the police officer decided to open fire because he saw that a life was in danger. But I think with this case, I think that this one is a lot more. I think it's going to be a lot more harder to decide. I think that this case is not as, you know,
You can make a better case in this scenario that
yeah,
shooting Machiavelli was justifiable in terms of saving potentially another person's life.
yeah. This is the video here that I'm referring to. I don't really want to play it just because of how sensitive it is, but yeah, it showed the whole tape. It showed what happened, but I think a lot of this was released at 6 p.m. on Tuesday evening. So right after the verdict of Chauvin occurred, and this sparked a lot of outrage in Columbus, Ohio, and also nationwide as well, because Tuesday's verdict was a really big um, movement into the right direction for justice for George Floyd. But this case really has taken spotlight, and yeah, I think we're just gonna have to wait and see. However, I think we need to talk about what LeBron James, his tweet is
Yep.
now deleted tweet. So, as a lot of you may know, LeBron James has been kind of one of the biggest figures in terms of promoting racial justice, using his platform to spread awareness. Um, I think that he probably is one of the most impactful athletes in terms of that. I don't know if you would agree, Big Don, if that's.
Yeah, I will agree with that statement.
I think there are others as well who really give back to the public, but LeBron, since he's one of, the most well-known basketball players to ever play the game, he's still, I would say he's just past his height of his career now. That's just for sport reason, but I think that he's so well known. He's been an icon in the sports since 2004, since he came into the NBA, and he's had such a big platform, and all the philanthropic activities that he's done outside of the NBA, and how giving back to Cleveland and the Cleveland area, and just giving back in general, and just using Twitter and other social media as a platform. I think that he has definitely had a big voice in this. And this is the two tweets that he now deleted, and I'll explain why he deleted them. And then I want to get your take on this. But first, this is what he said. Anger does any of us any good, and that includes myself. Gathering all the I think this was the first one. Yeah, this was the first one. My bad. Anger does any of us any good, and that includes myself. Gathering all the facts and educating does, though. My anger still is here for what happened to that little girl, my sympathy for her family, and may justice prevail. And then he later tweeted, I'm so damn tired of seeing Black people killed by police. I took the tweet down because it's being used to create more hate. This isn't about one officer. It's about the entire system. And they always use our words to create more racism. I'm so desperate for more accountability, in all caps. And he also had a picture, and this one they could not get because I believe he deleted it He deleted it right after he posted. And the deleted tweet was a photo of Officer Nicholas Reardon, the white police officer who fatally shot Makia Bryant to death. And the tweet read in all caps, "You're next, hashtag accountability." Um, and I think, I don't know. I just want to get your thoughts, Big Don, because I haven't really heard you. I've been kind of speaking too much.
Yeah, I think in this particular case, I mean, there's definitely a lot more nuance to what's exactly events concur during the Maki Bryant incident. I think it's obviously LeBron's a major figure. He's a major figure of the BLM movement, but I think for that particular case, I think it was too soon for anyone to jump the bandwagon of saying like, okay, this is another incident of police being racist. This is another example of systemic racism. Well, you could look at it as that. I mean, the problem with that is it's not as like cut and dry.
Mhm.
Obviously, there was some intent. Obviously, there was. I mean, you could say like, okay, well, he didn't really need to fire his gun, or they could use like better methods to detain the situation. But I mean, this is definitely a lot more nuance based than compared to like other cases.
I agree.
So I think it's unfair for people to jump the bandwagon on this. We need to see what officially comes out with this case. Of course, people are going to be very sort of reactionary, for lack of better terms, with how media sort of transpires, because this obviously came out during the George Floyd trial after that incident, and then everyone was kind of had that sense of like, okay, we're our focus now is on sort of criminal justice reform.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then once they see another video like this, like it's going to be easy for them to say like, okay, she didn't really need to get shot here. But I mean, this is definitely a harder case to figure out, say, to compare to like Eric Gardner or George Floyd.
Mhm.
We'll see what comes out, but I think LeBron could have handled this a bit better, and there's definitely a reason why he deleted those tweets.
I agree. I just think that going back to this, I think that sometimes when people sometimes their first reaction, can be a bit biased. I think that in LeBron's case, he admitted that he did not know all the details and that he needed to, gather all the facts before, saying something. I think that with LeBron in this case, I think he spoke his mind. Um, I I think that I think that it was probably the best decision to take down his tweets just because of how it did, spark controversy among people. And I think that just whenever something dramatic happens, any event, personal or something that happens in the news or whatever, people kind of develop opinions without getting the full facts, which is something that is not a good, practice at all. I think that, when somebody says, "Oh, there was, a shooting somewhere," and then you start having all these, thoughts that sometimes they're not even correct. I think that we need to get all the facts before we can make a judgment on something. I think it's hard though, because sometimes the facts don't come in a timely manner, and therefore people just hold um, this one opinion, this one just in general, this one notion, and then they just stick with it. They stick with it and they don't want to change it. And I think that in this case with LeBron, I think that he spoke on it. I mean, don't forget, this was the same day as the verdict. So there was a lot going on in people's minds. What if the verdict is not what we want it to be? I think a lot of people had anxiety that on Tuesday. You saw all the tension beforehand, anyways. And I think that just watching the video, I think it's going to take a lot more explanation as to what happened before you can, have your own opinion on it.
Yeah, well said. I think but we're going to see what happens in terms of that case. We're definitely going to keep you updated on as if anything else transpires with it.
Exactly. Exactly. Whoops. My microphone just fell. My bad. All right.
Well, it could have been last stream.
Mm.
I'm officially doubling that stream the disaster stream.
Yeah, I think that one might be getting deleted soon. Yeah, let's just talk about what happened last stream just for a couple minutes because I don't think we clarified what happened. So last stream, we were talking, it was a full stream. We were planning on doing a whole of everything what happened last week in terms of um what happened in Virginia, Minneapolis, no, Brooklyn Park. We were going to speak about, we spoke about a couple cases and we were going to speak. The last case we were going to talk about was in South Carolina. This was regarding a black teen and a Navy SEAL or someone in the military. We're going to speak about that. And I was about to pull up the video because I thought it was very important for our viewers to understand what happened. This was surfacing on Twitter now last week, so about 10, 11 days now, it was surfacing on Twitter. And I was about to pull up that video, and out of nowhere, my computer just shut off. Like
Yep.
it just
Had to
blacked
scramble or
out,
something.
screen blacked out, and I did not know what happened. So we use Zoom for those who don't know, and I didn't know what was going on. So I try to see, and my screen just went black, and I did not know what happened. I had it charging, and just so happens that it died, and it just too much data occurred. The fans of my computer, as you know, I have a MacBook, so MacBooks, they have the fans, and sometimes when you use a lot or if it overheats and sits on a surface for too long, the fans really start working up. And on top of that, I had a lot of different tabs open on my computer. I did not clean it well, and it's just too much data, and it just crashed, went black. And Big Don, props to you. You had to get Liz on, and you had to really just work.
I did make do with nothing.
Make do with nothing. It was one of those scenarios where we have to be better prepared if something happens in the future. And I hope it never happens again to any of us. It was a pretty tough moment, but I really thank all the viewers for understanding that we had technical difficulties last week and being understanding and accepting them. So that was the whole PSA there about what happened last week.
Yeah, but we don't know what we're going to be doing with that stream. We're probably going to be deleting it.
Yeah.
It was bad.
As for right.
And plus, we got a copyright claim on it because I played Joey Diaz.
Yeah, I think we're going to probably delete it. I think, however, the first part was good. We were definitely talking. I thought it was running smoothly up until 30 something, but yeah, I think for copyright purposes and other purposes, we probably are going to take that down sooner rather than later. I thought that it was a good stream to start, and then nothing against Liz or Big Don. I think that I think we weren't expecting it, so that therefore it just kind of, we didn't really have anything to talk about after because it just went down in the pit. So sorry about that, but that's what happened, and just to let everyone know. But let's get back on track because I just digressed a little bit here. And let's talk about what was going on in DC this week. So
welcome back to another episode of What's Going On.
What's going on in DC?
In the District of Columbia.
All right.
We also put up a poll saying whether or not DC should be a state, and surprisingly, people voted yes for this.
Yes, we did. We had 4 responses this week on Twitter. Should Washington, D.C. become the 51st state? And just to let you all know, too, what we're going to do in the next, I think every Thursday, we're going to probably do a poll. We've been doing this for the past 2 weeks now. 2 weeks ago, we had, is it a good idea to withdraw troops from Afghanistan? And out of 2 votes, we got 100%. And
we had some votes on Instagram as well for that.
Yeah, we had votes on Instagram as well. And they were, I think everyone approved on Instagram as well. On Twitter, we had, should Washington, D.C. become the 51st state? Out of 4 responses, we had 3 voting, yes, it's about time, and 1 saying no, keep it a non-state. So just go follow us on Twitter or Instagram. We put the story in our IG story here. I mean, the DC question, I can't open it up. I'm not logged in right now, but it's pretty compelling that I think a lot of people believe in the whole notion of no taxation without representation. Let's go here first. This CNN article is not pulling up. So this is by the AP. DC statehood approved by House as Senate fight looms. So as everyone knows, the vote, which happened on Wednesday, it was basically all party lines. All the Democrats voted in favor. All the Republicans in the House voted against. I think it's pretty understandable why. DC would get 2 senators and one House member. And I think the Republicans especially right now, kind of holding on to dear power, would see this as a big power grab by the
Yep.
Democrats. Um, this would be a very big, monumentous like change, and I think that therefore a lot of Republicans would be feared. I think they'd be fearful for their party's legitimacy in the future, because if the Democrats do, which there is a possibility, I think the Senate's a lot more complicated in terms of moderate Democrats, just and also how moderate Democrats would feel about this. I think that all the Republicans in the Senate would vote against. So Democrats would need a 50-50 tie in order for uh, Vice President Kamala Harris to get the deciding vote on this. But and I think that they're also discussing a filibuster, and how on top of the filibuster, how a lot of Democrats are just dislike it in general. There were some Democrats speaking about its history of just not, just being kind of seen as an obstacle at this point, and how a lot of Republicans said, well, you have used it in the past, so how can you say that? So there's also that with the whole filibuster, but it looks like the filibuster, you would need 60 votes for the filibuster to go away. And I think that all the Republicans like the filibuster, and you even have someone like Joe Manchin. So yeah, that's not going to pass. So we're going to have a filibuster still. But anyways, going back to this whole DC 51st state, they would get one representative and two senators, like every other state. The one representative would be because of DC's population, even though they're bigger than Wyoming, they still would only get one. And yeah, a lot of this has become also a it's also become kind of a controversy in terms of racism as well, because DC is 93% African American.
Mhm.
A lot of Republicans have been very not wanting to um, allow DC that. But I think in general, I think that the American public is kind of for this in a way. I think it's about 50-50 as well. I can try to pull up a Pew Research poll right here. But I just want to get your thoughts on this, Big Don. Reasons why you're either for it or against it, or what your thoughts are, how the political process you think is going to play out, any projections you have, anything like that.
Yeah, I can definitely see the political sense of why Republicans are going to be concerned about this. In terms of this making like legitimate sense, I mean, DC it's kind of fallen into this sort of state of okay, it's not. I still debate whether or not it's in like Maryland or Virginia.
Mhm.
It's kind of its own, for lack of a better term, autonomous zone.
You know what I think of it as? Not to cut you off, I think of it as the Vatican in a way.
Yeah, it is kind of like the Vatican,
The
except there's
Vatican,
no giant walls around it.
and also the Vatican is, yeah, it's kind of, when you think of it, going off topic here, the Vatican is like a country for Catholics. It's its own country. They technically have their own government with the whole Pope and all his cardinals and all the clergymen. Um, but yeah, it kind of is like that in the way that DC, it kind of operates like a city in the way that they do have a mayor, and also they have like a whole city, a city council and everything that like that, but they also are where all the power is as well. So it's a very, I think that the idea of having DC was kind of a, I don't know. I mean, in my eyes, I think that they should have done it maybe somewhere else. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to turn DC into a state, I mean, that's going to add no layer of complexity on it because you're going to need a governor. You're going to need like state representatives. I mean, for all one pretty much city, I mean, is it really worth it
Hmm.
to have like this level of like these tranches of like government sort of potential bureaucracy in there?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really weird concept that the founding fathers decided to go with. Because they were thinking about having it either in Philly, New York was a possibility as well. But yeah, it definitely has become a really important question to discuss. And I mean, last year the Democrats tried to do this, but it failed. And this year, there's a higher possibility. I don't think it's going to happen though. I think it's a little too radical right now. But um, let's see. All right, I found this article right here, and there's two, believe it or not. So this one came back in 2019. This is what it says. So this is a Rasmussen survey found 55% of respondents are against having DC as a state. This was back in, I believe, 2021, but there were also 2019 ones where it shows about 40 something percent are for it and 50 something percent are against it. So it still is not, a lot of Americans are still kind of opposed to the idea. This is what it says. Other polls in recent months have offered a more promising outlook. A poll released in September from Data for Progress and YouGov Blue, for example, found 43% of respondents supported DC statehood, up from 35% in 2019, primarily thanks to Democrats, and 34% were opposed. Meanwhile, a New York Times Siena College poll from the fall in 2020 found a 59 to 29% split in favor. And a Lake research survey around the same time in the fall found a 49 to 22% split also in favor. But I think that these polls, a lot of the people that they reach are kind of on party lines. I could see how the New York Times Siena poll, they probably poll a lot more Democrats. So I'd really want to see what the pool looks like for them. And kind of for YouGov Blue too, that's kind of more liberal in a way. I mean, I want to see something more along the lines of, let's see, 538 did a poll. Let me pull this one up. This is from 2019. I think 538 might be a little skewed to the left because a lot of Republicans don't really like it.
I mean, Republicans are really like polling in general. So
Yeah, but this one is pretty telling. Nearly 2/3 of Americans right here. Nearly 2/3 of Americans, 64% oppose making DC a state. This is a Gallup poll. So I think Gallup polls are pretty relevant. They're pretty telling still. So that was in 2019. I think it's shifted a little bit more towards that, but still it's pretty split. And I don't know at this moment it'd be the best idea. I think that if they wanted to do it, I think they would probably try to convert more territories into states.
yeah, that's kind of the argument going forward. To say like if this happens, like what would happen? How could this be affected with other cities? Like, would you turn like? I mean, now that we have to turn into this thought of like, okay, now DC's a state. Like, what else can we do here? Can we make like New York City a state? Can California separate from the union or something like that?
Oh yeah, there are actually people that want. I remember there were some polls and other things going around last year of people saying, "Oh, I think that California should be split in two, NoCal and SoCal." And other people were saying, "Well, I think that we should split Chicago from Illinois because Chicago's technically its own identity at this point." And then there were other people saying that they wanted to see territories like the U.S. Virgin Islands. Puerto Rico is a really big one. They've been discussing this a lot this week. Guam and other territories that the U.S. has, they wanted to see them because I don't know if you know this, in primaries and things before the election, a lot of these states and territories can vote.
Yeah, they can.
They can, which is really strange. Like I know Puerto Rico, they voted predominantly for Biden, I believe. And then you have Guam, which I don't know who they voted for the Republicans. But yeah, it's interesting to see those territories, and I think a lot of Americans look past that, and I think they kind of want to see them have more of a say in terms of who, because don't forget, we have basically autonomy. I mean, they're a territory, so that means that we do own it. Um, and I think that a lot of people want to see these territories, really get accepted into the union. And there's political reasons for that as well. I think with Puerto Rico and DC, the Democrats really see, 4 seats in the Senate and they see maybe up to like 2 or 3 seats in the House, which would really help them for congressional power. And I think that's what Republicans really are against. I think that they're all for taxation with representation. I just think that seeing it in a way that um, is going to hurt them politically, I think that they don't want this at all. This is a bad idea
No,
for
they do
them.
not.
This is a bad idea for what they want to push for the future and also their legitimacy. So I don't think that they're going to want this at all.
No, absolutely the other one, because this is gonna pretty much hurt their. I mean, even if we get like states like say Puerto Rico, I mean that's probably gonna be heavily favored towards Democrats too.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
I think it's gonna be. It also kind of falls in line with their conservative principles. I mean, we're trying to conserve sort of what we see as, because not only will this impact sort of how we have like a certain outlook on the United States,
Mm-hmm.
even though we're already kind of like a global superpower in terms of where we're located, what territories we kind of operate, and whether or not those have like some sort of political say or
Mm-hmm.
representation.
Exactly.
I think it's conservatives are going to try to keep to that fundamental principle and kind of use that as justification to say, okay, we're just going to keep it 50 states here, no more on the list.
Exactly. And also, it comes down to constitutional as well. And some have said, well, this is not what our founding fathers ever wanted to happen. They never wanted DC to become a state. They always specified it as a District of Columbia, meaning that it would not have any more political power than it already has. It's going to operate like a city, but it's going to have all our institutions there. It was never made to be a state. And I think that a lot of conservatives in general who really are, big constitutionalists, naturalists in a way, conservationists in the way of the law, I think that they have interpreted it this way as well. And I think that moving forward, I think that this is probably going to not make it past the Senate. I think that right now it's a little, even though the Senate's 50-50, I don't see this. I think that in 2022, however, looking ahead, I think that we're going to see if the Democrats can win the Senate, like legitimately win. I mean, right now it's 50-50. They would have to, they could possibly win. Again, they could possibly take a couple seats in. I know North Carolina is a big one that they're trying to reach for 2022. Win back Georgia again, because it looks like Warnock, he's going to have to run again in 2022, get on the campaign trail again, because that race is going to be up in 2022. Some other ones as well. I think it's going to be really interesting to see whoever pulls it off. If the Democrats can pull it off in 2022, you could see this happening. I just don't know right now 50-50. Joe Manchin and some other moderate Democrats. I don't know what they're going to say. They might either vote, they might oppose it. I don't think they're going to vote in favor of it.
No, I don't think so either.
And that's what's going to help the Republicans as of right now. But in the future, this is a big one. And I think that going back to what we could talk about in terms of how parties can campaign on this notion, Republicans can campaign on this. And I think this would benefit them a lot. Talking about how this would really damage the country, I think that they would get a lot of their voters to come out and vote against this and vote them in again. So I think that's big.
Right. I think this is going to come down to saying like, oh, the Democrats are trying to turn the United States into something that it's not.
I agree with you. I agree. And I see that as well. And I think that they're going to try to use that to their advantage. And like everything is always politically spun in a way. But I think that that is going to be something we have to look forward to for 2022. All right. Anyways, let's pivot over now to what the Senate passed. And actually, we have kind of, there has been, yeah, this one doesn't open. All right. All right. That's not good. I'm going to go pull it up again. We were having some issues, technical difficulties with this one, but I'm going to just talk about it. So, as you may or may not know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about the anti-Asian, the hate crimes that have been going on And the Senate this week passed the anti-Asian hate crimes bill. Um, what this bill basically is it's kind of a it kind of talks about just how they kind of created like this. I don't know how to explain it, but hold on, sorry about this. Um, there's just been my computer. One of the articles would not load on CNN for some reason.
Let's see here.
Yeah, this is just the Senate. Oh, I'll get Voice of America. Cool. So it says Senate overwhelmingly passes anti-Asian hate crime bill. So what this bill basically is that it kind of sets up a system for the different institutions within the government it just makes it easier to report hate crimes. It discusses some of the data behind this, reasons for why this happens, and also it kind of speaks volumes to supporting on the Pacific Islander and Asian community within the United States. Because a lot of you know, a lot of Asian people have been targeted due to the coronavirus. We've seen an uptick. I mean, the data's out there, it's profound. It shows that a lot of people who have Asian heritage are immigrants or have ties to the continent have been have experienced prejudice, racism, have been assaulted solely because of their race. And this has been discussed. It started last year. I think a lot of it had to do with former President Trump's rhetoric. I think other things were just about the coronavirus in general and how that didn't help. Relations with China was also another big one. And also just in general, prejudice and how people might not understand other cultures and lack of cultural competency were some of the main reasons why a lot of this anti-Asian rhetoric was even here in the first place. Um, Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, she was one of the big leaders pushing for this. Um, and she was able to get a lot of Republicans on board. Actually, almost all of them. Only one did not choose to vote in favor of this, and that was Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri. He voted against it. I think he gave his reasons why. I don't really know why, but he said he wanted to vote against it. All right, whatever. It doesn't look good for him. But all the Republicans did vote in favor of this, and I think it's a good bill. I think that um, some people have said, "Is it really a good bill?" I mean, it doesn't really do a whole lot. I mean, I think that
I think it's like a good PR move.
Yes, although it doesn't really have like a whole lot involved, I think it really just shows you um, how this is something that both parties, can discuss. I don't think it's really political. I think it's more, yeah, like you said, PR in a way. I think it's kind of sending a message to um, minority communities within the United States um, and people who might, uh, feel anxious or whatever, and they shouldn't be. And it just shows you how the government, in some ways, right now, Congress, how divided it is politically, and we understand why all these competing views, how this type of legislation can still, become effective in a way. And although some of the provisions on here are kind of just general and vague, I think that it was a good move. Big Don, I want to hear you. What you
Yeah,
have
it's
to say.
definitely nice to see Democrats and Republicans coming together to fight against the cause that is obviously taking place in this country over the last year of coronavirus. Definitely hasn't. I mean, we could point to the rhetorical strategy of Trump and the overall relationships we have with China, but overall, in terms of having like an inclusive environment for our country, I think we need to focus on that more, especially when we're seeing a rise in. We covered this like I think 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Two
We
weeks,
covered
three
the
weeks.
Asian hate crime stats that have been drastically increasing over the years. especially
Yep.
this year.
Mhm.
So I think it's a good stance to take. It definitely helps both images. I'm not it's of the Democrats and Republican Party. Not sure about not sure about Josh over there. I'm not sure what he was thinking, but you do you, Josh. But yeah, I think it's good to see people coming together and actually talking over this.
I agree. I think it was good to, discuss the importance of feeling inclusive in this country. I think that since we're such a multicultural and multi-ethnic, and we have all these different subcultures within the country, just recognizing every single person for their differences, I think was a very compelling thing. And I think that passing this anti-Asian hate crime bill was definitely a good move by Congress. And I think it shows you how promising some um, I would say passions or just in general um, things are to still a lot of our leaders, how they really focused on, promoting an inclusive country where everyone from every walk of life can live here, prosper, um, and enjoy. And I think that if we want to promote this kind of effectiveness, I think we need to look at this as a model for future um, future transparency, future, um, just in general, what our country has to offer. So I think this was a very big move that they did, and I think that it was a very powerful thing that they did. And as an American, I'm pretty proud of it. I am. I think that it shows how Congress can still work together to pass legislation that, although it might not be too impactful, I think that the message is clear that they want an inclusive country where everyone can feel safe and everyone can feel welcome.
Yeah, well said. We're gonna pivot here to something that's polar opposite of what's going on with the anti-Asian hate crime bill over here. We're gonna be talking about this recent unfolding with the Green New Deal. Now,
Yes.
now to give you some background on the Green New Deal, this has been proposed for I think almost 2 years now, ever since 2018,
Yep.
about how we can combat climate change. Biden has his own sort of plan in terms of how he wants to combat climate change, but the Green New Deal really takes it one step or a couple of steps further if you want to go that far. There's been a lot of estimates in terms of how much is being put into it.
Mhm.
There's a whole entire document planning out like, okay, what's going to go into it, and then there's obviously like measures of cost. They range from anywhere between like $20 trillion to like $96 trillion.
Damn.
So there's that. So recently, what happened? We're talking. This might be an interesting unravel in Congress. So Alexandria Ocasio Cortez,
AOC.
very well known, prominent figure within Congress. She's obviously the kind of the leader of sort of getting this bill proposed in terms of what's going on with Congress, or very influential politician. She recently got called up by newly elected Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we talked about her on the show. She's pretty much the polar opposite of AOC. She is pretty right wing in terms of her views by Washington D.C. standards. She said a
Mhm.
lot of crazy stuff in the past,
Mhm.
and now she's here on Congress, and now she called out AOC to actually debate the Green New Deal.
Mhm.
Now,
Exactly.
how this unfolded, it's an interesting story here. Apparently, she was already kind of planning it. There was a 14-page document that was recently released, and then Taylor Greene sort of like said, "Okay, well, I challenge AOC to debate this," even though I'm unironically she admitted to herself that she had not read the 14-page document. She has read it, and now she is fully calling out AOC in a debate. We're talking full on debate, bro, stuff here.
When's it gonna happen? Do you know?
I have no idea, but this might be a good show.
Yeah, we might have to do a live stream and watch it and give us some of your give us some of our opinions. Oh my gosh. I think that that would be a really interesting and entertaining debate. I think that a lot of debates today, sometimes they're a little monologue and just kind of melancholy. But I think that this debate, specifically with Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC, I think that how both of them are kind of on the polar opposite for the political spectrum. I mean, the right views AOC as a full-on socialist. She has a lot of social democratic views, a little more left than Bernie in some ways. And then the left views Marjorie Taylor Greene, as an absolute QAnon loony, someone who's very conservative,
Jewish
someone,
space lasers.
yeah, she said a lot of that stuff. Also, someone who's a big backer of Trump as well. So, I mean, you can see how this is probably the Super Bowl of the radical views in this country.
Yeah, this is. I'm not sure
He's
how they're going to do this debate though, because I mean,
they're gonna have to do it
because
virtually.
it's kind of weird how you can format it on like congressional floor. I'm not sure if they're going to use an outside source to debate this.
I think
Probably,
they should.
yeah, they should, but I don't know if they can because they're public representatives of the people of the United States. Even though AOC has gone on like Twitch and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that in terms of. Oh yeah, I don't know if public reps can do private type events. However, I don't know if they're really gonna want to do it on the Senate. I mean, on the House floor.
Yeah, I mean that's gonna be a.
I'd say virtually do it.
Yeah, I say virtually do it. I say get a moderator.
Who would be a good moderator?
Oh, I know a good moderator. I mean, we're not going to talk about mainstream figures here. Of course not. We need a true moderator.
Who are you
So
thinking?
that's so you know who I'm thinking. I am thinking James from Modern Day Debate.
Okay, you know
I
who
love
I'm
me. I
thinking.
love me some Modern Day Debate.
You know who I'm thinking. This guy works for C-SPAN. I forgot his name, but he was doing the live call-ins afterwards. I think he's a really. I think C-SPAN. I mean, they're kind of like they have to be down, down, down the middle. Like they're probably the only source for when debates occur that they're like really down the middle. I think he'd be a really good one. Also, there's a guy who runs a political like show. His name is Peter Hamby. I think he'd be pretty good too.
Yeah, I think the most realistic option is C-SPAN because I think that's probably the most likely platform you can get like a congressional debate of sort of with those restrictions in mind. I'm not sure if you can do like on MSNBC or like
Nah, they would
Fox.
not do it on there.
No, they cannot do that.
I don't think either of them would approve of. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene would not want to go on anything besides Fox News, and AOC would
Or
not want to.
Newsmax.
Oh yeah, Newsmax. She'd want
Yeah.
Newsmax
Shout out to
or
Newsmax.
One America News or something like that. That's what
And
she'd want it on, and then AOC would say, "Nope, CNN, please
CNN, MSNBC. I don't know.
do it on one of those networks." That's what she would say. But anyways, yeah, this is going to be a big event. Do you want to turn to some of the policies? We kind of found like a little cheat sheet here.
Yeah, we're not going to read over the whole entire 14 pages.
No, we're not going to read. I mean, we could do that in our free time kind of thing. But let me go down here really quickly. I just want to point out a few things. So, what is in the Green New Deal? The main goal of the plan is to bring US greenhouse gas emissions down to net zero and meet 100% of power demand in the country through clean, renewable, and zero emission energy sources by 2030. President Biden, I believe, he set out his own goals this week, and I think that they're a little bit more achievable in terms of, I think it's 2050. He wants net carbon, which means that he wants no more. Also, the Green New Deal also calls for the creation of millions of jobs to provide a job guarantee to all Americans, along with access to nature, clean air and water, healthy food, and a sustainable environment and community resiliency. Some of the goals specifically that they have as provisions are investing in renewable power sources, so such as solar, wind, water, things like that. The only thing that the reason why a lot of people are kind of opposed to it is how you actually like hold this. So like how you can compact this energy and hold it, because sometimes solar and wind, sometimes they don't work too well. Also, they said investing in manufacturing and in industry to spur growth in the use of clean energy. I would say that probably the EPA would have a big role in this. Also, they said upgrading all existing buildings and building new ones so that they achieve maximum energy efficiency, water
Mhm.
efficiency, safety, affordability, comfort, and durability. Also, it says for environmental purposes, they said restoring ecosystems through land preservation, afforestation, and science based projects. Um, and then they have a lot of things that a lot of the EPA already does, like cleaning up existing hazardous waste and abandoned sites. That's kind of under RCRA. Identifying unknown sources of pollution and emissions. And then it says supporting family farming, investing in sustainable farming, and building a more sustainable and equitable food system. So, I mean, just looking at this, a lot of this is kind of just vague, but you kind of get the notion what they kind of see the US as in the future. I mean, it's specific that a lot of people don't, maybe they like the idea. However, they see how costly this is, and therefore they kind of turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah.
And I completely understand, you know.
Yeah, I remember when the original Green New Deal was being thrown around. I mean, there was some stuff intertwined with it, and we could still see like stuff that like guaranteeing jobs. Where stuff like okay, I think back to like in 2018, there was like a guarantee on like student loan forgiveness.
Mhm.
There's some stuff intertwined that didn't really have like anything to do with climate change. I mean, this stuff for sure is ambitious in terms of setting setting like environmental standards and regulations, and there's a lot of debate going on like in terms of what the cost of it is going to be. If there is going to be a debate, obviously Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to pull whatever it takes to say, okay, we're going to run up a deficit on this.
Oh, of course she's going to bring that up. She's going to bring up deficit a lot. Um, she'll probably also just talk about how, um, just how kind of radical it is in a way. Because I mean, 2030 is not too long away. Some European countries have used 2030 as a benchmark, but they have already, like Norway and Sweden and Denmark, like they have already kind of started this process. We are trying to. It's just kind of it's hard right now, but I think 2030 might be a little too recent. I'm thinking more 2040, 2050 for this to be more effective, you know. Also costs, I think a lot of costs are going to go into it. Research and development in terms of, you know, providing more solar panels for people, make them more affordable, and do other partnerships so that residents, so this is not just something where higher class people can do some, and how, I mean, we see it today and how a lot of people are starting to get solar panels on their houses, apartments, how effective that's going to be, how costly they are. um I think that it's hard. But I was watching some videos, and there was a good point brought up, just throughout some of the videos that I watched about, just criticisms of this. And they said that the first thing that you kind of really have to do in order to become more efficient, and especially in countries that are developing, is to try to solve poverty first.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge part of it because that's probably where your biggest polluters are going to be for our country.
Like China, India, you know.
Yeah, I mean, this week I did do a summit
Mhm,
on sort of combating climate change with many different countries. I think China, India were included on that guest panel.
mhm. But I
So
mean,
maybe they're trying to be more ambitious in terms of combating the plants. But there's obviously limited stuff you can do in
I
terms
think
of influencing other countries. Like, okay, we could sit over here and do our parts, but how are we going to? But we got China over there. They're polluting the hell out of their skies. It's all covered in smog.
Mhm. Exactly. And also, you see just how a lot of people around the different Chinese cities, have to wear face masks. A lot of people are getting emphysema and other cardiovascular diseases because of this. And how, the Chinese government is recognizing this, but they make the point that, we're a developing nation. We're not fully developed like Europe and the United States. We're still developing, so I mean, this just kind of goes into global politics as well, and how they make the claim that, well, since they're developed, since they already have industry, since they already have all this technology, and since you know a predominantly majority of their citizens are either in a pretty, make pretty decent wages, they can go to the stage where it focuses on, living a sustainable life. Our people can't, some of them are still not even making $1 an hour, and they're living in poverty. So we're going to have to still focus on industrialization. We're going to be having jobs, we're going to be using energy, and we're going to be polluting and polluting and polluting. But right now, if you look at it, we're only, I mean, their whole thing is that we're like, in terms of following a more greener pattern, we're probably like 10-15 years out from that. We still have a lot more development to do. Don't forget, we're the most populous country in the world. India's just a little below us, but still India is going to be there as well. And how both of those countries, how their industrialization, was a little bit delayed. They were delayed, and how the 20th and latter half of the 20th century was when they all came and they all rose. And how I think we'll eventually see more greener practices in these two nations in particular. And there's others: Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam as well, Mexico as well. But I think that for right now, I think the US, Canada, Europe are going to be the main, they're going to be the trailblazers for this. And we'll see how this rolls out.
We shall see, and we're definitely gonna see what the debate coverage is going to be like. If there's going to be a debate, I think we should get a debate.
You think so?
I think so. I think it would definitely be interesting to see the two radicals of the political spectrum
Oh,
in
I think it
Washington.
would be great.
I think it will be great too.
But I kind of don't want to see them just debate on this. I kind of want to see them debate on a whole wide variety of issues. Tax policy, I want to see them debate on. I want to see them debate on immigration. I want to see them debate on everything, because AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene, those two figures, those two Congress women, they have probably the biggest opposition. You know, they are so different in terms of ideology. I think that it would just be amazing, not just to talk
Amazing.
about a specific um, legislation or bill that's trying to be passed, but I think that they need to speak about everything. I think that would be just amazing to speak of. Amazing.
Amazing.
But I mean, just it would just be much watch. I think that it's going to get boring just speaking about this, because you're going to understand what both sides are going to say. But for them to speak about Trump and how Marjorie Taylor Greene is going to say something, and then AOC is going to absolutely snap at it, I think that'll be pretty good. I think that'll be best for business. But
Yeah,
we'll wait and
absolutely.
see on that.
It's gonna be a fireworks show for sure. I don't care who, if both decide to argue in extreme bad faith. I feel like Marjorie Taylor Greene's gonna do that to maybe to some extent. AOC is, because I don't think any of them have like really any skill in debating. But then again, my skill in debating is just watching people like Destiny in modern day debates.
Well, I think that the art of debating, I mean, we could talk about this. It's kind of about having all your talking points ready, to have it backed up, and to also understand what your opponent is going to say. So if you can tell, it's kind of like chess in a big way, Big Don. Because if you understand what your opponent's next move is going to be, you can counter that quickly. You can counter it in a way that makes you sound witty. It's kind of also about, making yourself and presenting yourself in a way that you don't look like an idiot. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's all
And
about rhetorical strategy as well.
yeah, I mean, when you watch Trump, I mean, I have to say Trump is probably one of the better debaters we've seen in a way. I think he dominated. I mean, this is just political way. I think that he was, not this time around, but in 2016, he absolutely owned Hillary in a lot of ways. You could tell by his body language how authoritative he was. But I mean, if you watch other people as well debate, others are better than others. I think Ben Shapiro really gets people on the ropes a lot. He's a good debater. And you have others as well on both sides. But I would say those two are really good if you want to watch a debate. Um, But you have to practice different tactics. You have to have your things ready. You can't just go, I don't know. Because I mean, we were watching a debate, remember a couple weeks ago, by this one YouTuber people. They were debating about, I don't know, was it the Iran deal or something?
I don't think it
Remember
was the
that?
Iran deal.
No, something about nuclear weapons in Iran. Remember that? It was a couple weeks ago. We were just flipping through.
Oh yeah, we were.
They did not have anything ready. I don't even know their names, and they were kind of irrelevant.
Oh
But
yeah, we were. Yeah, we were perusing around like random live streams on YouTube right
we
after we
saw
did the
these
show,
people.
and then we saw these people. They had no idea what the hell they were talking about.
It was
We made a comment in their
idiocracy.
section. They probably got freaked out by it, and then they moved on with their lives.
Yeah, we said something, but it was not like anything rude. We were just
If it-
talking about, oh, talk about this, and then we left because it was just they didn't even have anything ready. Like when you debate, especially now, have your stuff ready with you. When
yeah,
we do our debate, right? When Big Don's gonna debate, we're gonna have a few people come on. We're gonna have a debate, people. We're gonna be doing it in probably the summer. We're gonna do a debate series, we're hoping. About a whole lodge of issues. We're going to get people on. That's our plan. But when we have debates, we're going to have everyone create documents of what they put it. This is going to run smoothly. It's not going to be an absolute S show, for another word, for a lack of a better term to use. We're going to have it so that both competitors or whomever is there, it could be a joint one as well. They can show us what they have, present it in a civil way, have a debate about it, and move on. I see our platform having one of the best debates. I see it, when we do have debates, it's going to be orderly, it's going to be functional, it's going to run well, it's going to inform the viewer. That's what we want. And I think that's
absolutely.
what we're going to get. But yeah, just telling all you people out there right now, Big Don, you said, ban Big Don, please.
Bam, Big Dumb, please. I try to make myself a moderator there. I was just on chat. No one's activated. We're missing our favorite lib there tonight, but that's okay.
We'll be getting more people. Don't worry.
Yeah, we get people.
You can always watch the playback too of us. We're always on the playback as well. But anyways, people, I think we're going to start wrapping it up. An hour 20 stream last week. We had to explain everything what happened last week, but we had a good stream this week. We're going to be back again next week, and I think in 2 weeks we're going to take a week off. At least for me, I'm going to be doing some work. I'm almost in finals for school, a couple weeks away from that. But in the summer, we're planning on doing maybe 2 nights, 3 nights a week of Peace and Chaos. We're also doing some projects behind the scenes. And also, just to let you all know before we go, Big Don, you have anything else to say before we start wrapping up?
No. I mean, if anyone wants to come on debate or be a part of our debate platform for the summer, let us know in the comment section below, or feel free to DM us on
DM us on
YouTube,
Instagram or
Twitter, or
You
if
can
you know us
message us on
personally.
there. Yeah, I would say Peace and Chaos Podcast. You can follow us on here, DM us, or you can go onto Twitter as well and do the same under messages. That's going to do it for us though this week. We're probably going to be having some more discussions about some of these things. Also, we're going to probably be doing more GeoGuessr in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. But just to remind you all, go follow us on Instagram. That is Peace and Chaos _podcast, Peace and Chaos _podcast on Instagram, and on Twitter, Peace and Chaos P1. That is Peace and Chaos P1. You can always go click on the banner on our YouTube page to go check out our ingrained links for Twitter and Twitter and Instagram respectively. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back again here next week, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be discussing everything that happens throughout next week. We're going to give you all updates as well, and we're going to do some more. Thank you all for tuning in today. I'm DJ Aceman. See ya.
Peace.